So my name is Apollo Timbers. I am the founder and owner of Second Robotics LLC. What my company does is it is a innovative AI software and hardware company. And really, I know that kind of hits a lot of, that's a really general term, and I understand that. And hopefully, after I get through some slides, you guys will have a little better understanding. So story time. A few years ago, I had my first child. Her name was Cordelia. Her name actually means Jewel of the Sea. And because of that, it was really important for me back then because we didn't even know if we could have children. So I don't know if that means much for some people, but it was important to me. And because of that, I kind of made a commitment to create a legacy for her. And that's kind of what part of this business is, to try to make sure that that she and others like her have the best STEM education available to them. And it's a small subset. I wouldn't say small, but that's one of the big subsets of my company. And hopefully I can show you a little bit more. So I kind of made a slide because how you can help, what I'm kind of looking for maybe. Good ways to get exposure. Any ideas about moving to the next level from where I'm at. And then of course any programs or anything I need to know about, that would be fantastic. So I appreciate it. So what am I trying to solve? Well, luckily, robotics has a lot of problems. So it's not so much about the problems that are there. It's actually cutting out the noise and what you need to focus on. So my job's a little harder because there is so many problems in robotics and AI right now that it's harder to actually come up with a smaller subset or a smaller group of things to actually try to focus on, to try to push the field of robotics and AI forward. So hopefully maybe some people that are into AI or robotics might understand what I'm kind of coming from there, but advancements in actuators, lighter power sources, those kind of things is what I'm interested in, and always trying to reduce the cost of robotics so that everybody can afford them, basically. Because nobody wants to buy a $100,000 home robot. Well, maybe a few do, but not the vast majority of people. So most STEM products do not allow students to innovate. And it's not all, don't get me wrong, there's some great STEM education tools out there, but what ends up happening is they're set in stone about you build something, it may teach something, and then you never use it again. And then the teacher throws it in the closet and they never see it again. So I'm trying to make products that are adaptable and can be used for multiple subjects so that they're not just thrown in the closet after you're done building them. Companies often approach artificial intelligence, AI, at a single angle, and the best way to describe that to you is like a programmer gets blinders. He thinks AI is going to solve this problem in robotics, which is great, and it might, but it's actually a fusion between biology, mechanical engineering, and AI that's going to solve the problem. So it's really a synergy between the 3 or 4 or 5 disciplines. So you have to have multidiscipline, people together as a team developing these things, not just one guy doing hardware, one guy doing software, and putting blinders on. So that's kind of where I'm trying to be different from most. The third option is actually where a bigger part of my revenue may come from, is a lot of AI startups, research companies, and universities. What ends up happening is they develop AI software packages, and it's all great, and then they model it on these vast supercomputers to come up with algorithms, or hey, this is an orange, which is kind of where deep learning is going right now, and that's fantastic, but unfortunately there's no understanding behind that. The robot doesn't understand that an orange will roll. It doesn't understand that orange is food. So there's not a lot of that associative knowledge inside of robotics right now. So we're going to try to work towards that. But eventually what they need is a platform to throw the code on and test in the real world. Because it's great that your drone or your robot can navigate inside that model, but guess what? When you put that on an actual robot, it's not going to work. I guarantee it. And if you show me model to hardware that works, I will buy that package from you. because it's just, model is such a funny thing. There's different things to think about, like for a drone, for instance, when it's flying around, your model may not accurately predict the wind patterns coming off a skyscraper. So when your drone flies up to a skyscraper, it won't be able to react to that, and it's going to crash and burn. So those are the kind of things that are different between reality, actually having it on a piece of hardware, and not. So that's enough of that slide. So our mission is kind of capped on a little bit, is to have new innovations in robotics, AI software, and hardware. You need both. You can't just do one or the other and expect it to work. It's not. You can't build a robot and not put code on it, because it's just going to sit there. And you can't code something in software because it doesn't do anything for anybody. So it's kind of a fusion between both. We're always trying to reduce the cost of robotics. They're expensive. We get it. But the thing is, that's like part of my job as a robotics engineer, and part of this company is to try more affordable actuators and so forth. And eventually what's going to actually have to happen is the cost is going to get significantly so much that the accuracy is going to drop from an industrial robot arm, per se, has, very, very good precision. But that's not what we need for a home robot. That's not what we need to go pick up, some socks off the ground, or pick up a cup from the thing. We need pretty close. We need a manipulator that actually can work around humans and not hurt them. So at that point, you need compliant actuators and a bunch of other fun stuff. And then the third thing is, we always want to foster innovation thinking in students. Why? Because robotics still has a long way to go, and because of that, we're going to try to build up the next generation to try to carry what we do even farther. So because I really want a robot at home. So progress so far, we formed a pretty strong partnership with Innovative Board Designs. They kind of do the mainline engineering for some of the product designs that I come up with, so that if anybody has heard like drywall's an art, well, it is. I don't try to pretend that I have 30 years experience designing a printed circuit board, every day in and day out. I let professionals handle that, because that's what they do. And if I did that, I could do it, but it's going to take me way longer than they can. So it's better to use somebody experienced in the field for that. We did release a robotics control board on Kickstarter. That was a great experience for me. It kind of put me through the chain of manufacturing through China and so forth. But I think what really came down to it is I didn't have the financial backing to do like a really nice marketing behind it. So I think that's one of the mistakes I've made in the past. So I make mistakes. I have a pretty nice website built. You should check it out. secondrobotics.com. And then I have a decent business plan and fancy designs. So this is actually a picture of something I brought. This is called an AI core. At least that's what I'm considering it. Just think it's basically a remote sensor is the best way to describe it. It's a computer built into a shell that looks pretty. But really what it does is it's socketable. So if anybody maybe understands that kind of hardware, if this thing breaks, I literally just pull it out and put a new one in. So if that kind of maybe throws that for you. So how do we bring value to our customers? This is what I've seen with STEM products and a lot of products that teachers use to teach biology or math or science or programming, is they do 2 of these bubbles very well, not 3. That's the thing, they don't hit all 3. So they either save the teacher time by having the curriculum pretty much planned out for them, and they definitely teach you about real-world applications, but they're not really that fun. So if they're not fun, then the student's not engaged. If the student's not engaged, he's still not learning anything, or she. So that's kind of what I'm saying. What I'm trying to get to is, it's better to maybe try to hit all 3 at the same time. So developing products that are both fun, save time for the educator, and teach a real-world equivalent is kind of where I want to go with some of the products. This is getting into the future. This is actually a board for the Arduino open source microcontroller, if anybody's familiar with that. It's a shield. It's basically to teach biology, computer programming, and So what it does, it has built-on sensors for humidity, temperature, and light. And what it does is monitors a plant and then also detects the moisture of the plant, and then it'll water it if need be. So if you have a really nice plant at home, I guess you could order this and then it'd take real good care of it. But the key to this is it's going to be more of a 10-in-1 kit where they can also design a little mini game on it because it has a screen and so forth. So it's kind of a multi-purpose board. Soft robotics is actually a subset of robotics overall. Really what soft robotics is trying to go to lower cost actuators and actuators that can more mimic the human body and be more compliant, but still be low cost and have considerable strength to weight ratio is basically what that comes down to. So this is actually a design of an actuator that I made. I brought it along as well. It's actually ran by a vacuum. So you pull a vacuum and it's actually got silicone inside of it that it pulls probably like 30 millimeters or so. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's fantastic because there's absolutely no metal and it's silicone, so it can handle very high heat. So if you put a much stronger plastic case around it, you're talking about an actuator that can work in conditions that most actuators can't. So if that kind of means anything to you. So this is the next generation of a mobile robot platform. Like I was speaking before, people actually need a robot to program on because eventually they have to make the code real. So what I'd like to do, if anybody's heard of Willow Garage, they had a robot probably 10, 13 years ago that was about $300,000, which was a steal. Because most companies were willing to pay for that and more to have some kind of development platform like that. Hopefully I can get this one under 100,000, which is actually really amazing for those kind of high-level research. So this kind of robot would deal with more the emotional side. It'd be at eye level. It would replicate blinking and so forth. So kind of getting into that social robotics aspect of actually having a robot in your home. So, but that's really it for me. I guess we'll head to questions.
Please wait for the microphone so we can all hear you. So who would like to start the questions?
Great presentation. I walked in a little late, so you might have covered something that I just didn't see. How do you differentiate yourself from Lego Mindstorm, first and foremost?
No, that's a great question. So Lego Mindstorm is a very established, and they're a great name. I have to actually hand it out to Lego. They did some really great things. They're a toy. I mean, when you really break it down, that's kind of one of the underlying problems I see is at the end of the day, you're not bringing that to somewhere to show to somebody because it is a toy, and that's fine for most students, and that's great. But I'm trying to develop products that you may be able to actually solve real-world problems with and real-world research. So those sensors on that plant shield, if you were here for that, are accurate enough to actually get you data that you would use in the real world to actually monitor plant growth. So, and I think how Mindstorms kind of misses on that, maybe the best way to describe is they kind of use the lowest cost they can find, and at that point it's not really accurate. So the temperature that it's reporting really isn't the temperature, it's just kind of close. But, which is great for learning, but it doesn't help anybody else, I guess.
But I guess the point would be what is your focus? Are you actually trying to do for students? Are you trying to build like a Roomba? Are you trying to build, like a $9,000 robot that's going to be able to do stuff like so, the DARPA people?
Right. Oh yeah, if I had that kind of funding, I wouldn't be here. The DARPA robotics is actually really good. They're really making huge advancements on that kind of stuff. But I would say I'm more STEM and education based. This kind of robot that I would like to build is more of a promotional and more of a research robot for universities but that's still in my wheelhouse. I'm still trying to cater to universities and somebody trying to learn on a platform. So this is just the biggest level, I guess, of the company that I'd like to go into.
I guess the follow-on I see is that if you're trying to hit STEM, cost is by far your biggest hurdle to get it in schools and things, as opposed to, I guess you got to focus on what is your niche and what are you trying to hit before you jump to something bigger.
Right, no, this is, like I said a few slides back, this is really just future work. I just thought I'd throw it up here. But the STEM Shield and some of those more low-cost ways of doing things is really what I want to do, start at the high school, college level, but then work up from there. So, but yeah, it's better to have a narrow market. You're absolutely correct.
So, awesome presentation. Cool stuff you're working on. Two sort of small questions. First one is Second Robotics, sort of where does the name come from? And number two, it sort of goes back to his focus, is sort of what specifically were you trying to solve? I think you got into that with the control board, sort of watching the plants grow. I guess maybe the focus of what you're doing is pretty important to figure out sort of the direction you want to move with your company. But I think you just answered the question I was going to ask, so I should basically ask that again.
So Second Robotics was because First Robotics was taken. So, I'd rather be first. But to really get into it, it's more to teach students about subjects, biology, math, science, programming. So those kids will be around that. So all the technology that's really developed is for that. But on the flip side, with some of that extra research cash, if you could call it that, we'll really be just trying to, move robotics forward because there are a lot of AI problems and a lot of hardware problems that are still needing to be solved.
So it's an educational
Yes.
robotics company?
Yep, educational robotics, but we still innovate on the AI side, for other companies and so forth. So,
More questions?
I'm sorry.
Follow-up.
And so I guess on the education robotics function is, how are you going to generate revenue off of that?
So we'll be selling the kits, and then the kits will actually have. It's not like a recurring revenue model. If that's what you're asking, we're not going to charge an X amount per month for the school or anything like that. You want to have a really nice STEM education boards or robots to actually use or not. That's the school's choice. But we are going for higher end schools or schools that are a little bit more well funded, and they are out there. And what it really comes down to is it's a hard question. I won't lie. So.
We got the next question. Oh, you're right.
You were talking about an improved actuator and going in that direction. I was thinking that that's where the market is. That if you can produce parts for a wide variety of industries, you can make some money to be able to put more into this education process. Because like they said, price is everything when it comes to education and buying yet another teaching tool. If you can the other thing is that if you've patented this thing and technology is known to improve and evolve practically on a monthly basis. So, why would a school buy a very expensive kit when 2 years from now it's going to be obsolete? So, have you thought about really putting some time and effort into the actuator as a potential source of funding, not only for money, but because it'll give you better credentials as well?
Oh, that's a great point. On the hardware side and design side, that is something I have a passion of doing and I can do. The actuator was actually just something I came up with not too long ago. It doesn't have a patent on it. I don't even know if it's a patentable item because soft robotics is actually already out there, and but I'm probably the first one that came up with, hey, why don't we put this into a shell so that somebody can't just slice into it? So if there's any innovation on top of that, it's basically that. But no, that actuator is actually ahead of its time because the AI to run that actuator doesn't exist yet. And the way I can explain that to you is AI is going to have to make mistakes, like me and you do, because that's what AI is going to be soon. And it's going to need really compliant actuators that can bend and flex and take a hit. And that's what that kind of actuator is. It's not really for an industrial level, but it is more for a research level, kind of an actuator possibly. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm just going to go down the education route. That seems like the prevailing topic. So
Talk into the mic.
can you hear me?
Yeah, there
Sorry,
you go.
I apologize. Okay, so it really seems that it's not really the price of the robot that's the problem. Like when it comes to like selling that to a college, like that's not going to be your problem. First of all, it's going to be your sales cycle, and then it's going to be your curriculum. Like that's what they really want to see. Like the colleges that you're supposed to be going after, they should have huge budgets, and so they don't want you like saying like, hey, it's only $3,000 for this robot. They want a strong curriculum. That's what you should be focusing on if you were going down this route. Like I think they're saying like you need to make sure you focus and figure out, do I want to go down the educational route? Because like that's where you need to be talking to as many schools as possible with huge budgets and whatever, right? You don't even necessarily have to have this robot fully built out. When you start those conversations now, show the curriculum that you're trying to build and all that, and get them on your side. So that's what
No, that's fantastic. So to kind of caveat on that, I think curriculum and education behind the products is important because that's really what's going to sell it, not the product itself. So you're definitely hitting the money there. But there is a point where the college actually doesn't want you to put a curriculum behind it. Like a robot like that, they're not expecting curriculum behind it. They're expecting that they have software that they need to load onto it and do their own thing. So there's a gap between the two product lines. One would be for high school or middle school or something, and yes, it would have huge resources backing it. But when you get into this kind of level of a robot platform, they could care less. All they really want is ROS loaded and it to turn on when they flip the switch. So because they don't want to deal with it, they have some programming they need to take care of. So.
Well, I guess to go along with that question, we've got essentially three parts to this. You're selling the hardware part that goes into the schools. There's the curriculum part, it's absolutely necessary. And the third is the teaching staff that's educated enough to learn the tools in order to instruct the students. Right? So there's not just curriculum, you have to actually educate the educators. I think it's pretty obvious that there are a dearth of qualified STEM educators around, and this is a fairly high level of education that you're talking about, especially someone that can take that and then reduce it to practice and reduce it to an educational curriculum. Do you have a plan also to address that issue?
So the plan to kind of address that is there's some already pretty established companies that kind of hit into the same market I do. Parallax Incorporated, I don't know if anybody has heard of them. But what they do is actually send out representatives from their company to go teach educators. So they have seminars to teach them about their products so that they can teach students about that. So unless you have something like that, I think you're absolutely right. The teacher's just not going to know how to use it. And then how's he supposed to carry that on to the student? So you're absolutely right on that too.
Well, my second question was, were you going to cover some of the details of your business plan as well, or did you?
I wasn't today, but I mean, if you guys are interested in more, I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. But sure. I kind of just wanted to keep this. I could talk about AI for days, but at some point I have to remove slides.
So I'm going to pile on the curriculum issue. I think from an adoption and a sales standpoint, if you don't have that supporting component, it's going to be a really tough sale. And also, if you have that component, that presents an opportunity for recurring revenue. So once you've sold the kit, then you can come back year after year and sell different curriculum components and add on to it, which will support your business model as opposed to just a one-time transaction. But I really would challenge you to go back and really look at what teachers are going to want and expect. And they may not articulate that to you directly, but look at what other products have sold in the marketplace that are hardware driven, and how they've wrapped around curriculum to make sure that they're reducing friction for adoption.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I'd love to have a recurring, everybody does, but yeah, those resources have to be built out.
You actually took it, yeah.
So where did you do your training? I missed that when I walked in.
Well, because I didn't tell you. So I have actually kind of an abnormal background. I was in the United States Air Force for 6 years. I worked on guidance systems of ICBMs.
Okay, so if you're trying to get into universities, Missouri S&T, because they have a fantastic robotics program, I would really go talk to them, and they're just down 44 in Rolla, okay? Because they do this for a living, and if you're trying to hit that level of education, I think they'd offer tremendous resources as far as what you need to have to really make it. Other thing is like the local Meetup group. There's a robotics Meetup group. I would definitely get in touch with them. I don't know if you're from this area, but wherever you are from, meet up with them because they are hardcore robotics and AI people just like you, and from all walks of life. And so they might give you insight as to where you need to go to make this thing happen.
No, I think the role is an excellent suggestion. I mean, I've been doing electronics and robotics for about 14 years on top of that, so yeah.
All right, I will take the last question, and you touched on it at the very beginning, but I'll list, what are you looking for from the community? What would you like people to start thinking about for you to come back here?
I mean, like I said on the slide, I mean, any resources or, like that was a perfect shout out about Rolla. I think that was a great suggestion. Anything that you think is a valuable resource that I need to get in front of, that's great, and I'll do it. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Apollo.